relief study was, a very interesting study. We made the observation that people with frequent migraine in particular would, on any given day, be very likely to have a migraine. In fact, that's where we developed this idea of day one efficacy, following preventive efficacy following an infusion. But we asked the question, well, how fast does this really work? And is there any possibility that this might have some benefit on an acute episode of migraine? So it wasn't being proposed to be an acute treatment for migraine, but that there might be benefit that both patients and physicians should know about. And so that was kind of the genesis, if you will, of the relief study. And what we did here is we provided an infusion of eptinezumab during an acute migraine attack. People who were eligible in terms of the migraine frequency they reported to be candidates for prevention were brought into this study. So they had between 4 and 15 migraine days per month. So that's a broader range than would normally be done in any type of an acute study. And they had to come in with 1 to 6 hours of the time or onset of their migraine. And when they got there, they were then treated with 100 milligrams of eptinezumab. The primary endpoint in this study was a time to event measure. So it was comparing placebo and active drug in terms of how long it took for people to become pain-free, headache-free, and to have resolution of their most bothersome symptom, which in acute treatment studies is a patient chooses between nausea, photophobia, and phonophobia as their most bothersome acute symptom. So we had to resolve both of those things. They were co-primary endpoints in this study. And then we had a host of different secondary endpoints. We had headache pain relief, or pain freedom, I should say, not relief, at 2 hours. We had the absence of the most bothersome symptom at 2 hours. And then other secondary endpoints were headache pain freedom at 4 hours, absence of MBS at 4 hours, and use of rescue medication within 24 hours. There was a definite significant difference between the time it took to get headache pain freedom and freedom from MBS with eptinezumab versus placebo. And at 2 hours, 23.5% versus 12% for placebo were headache-free. And in terms of their MBS, it was 55.5 versus 35.8% that were free of the most bothersome symptom. There were 7 pre-specified primary and secondary endpoints. All of these were statistically significant, and we hit on all endpoints in this study. We also looked at the HIT-6, and this is an outcome measure, and we looked at this over the first month following the infusion, and those scores, too, were markedly in favor of eptinezumab. And if you looked at the specific items for the HIT-6, all of these were statistically superior for eptimezumab versus the placebo. There were 450 patients with migraine, and they had to have an attack treated within 1 to 6 hours. And of course, by the time they had the IV, it may have delayed treatment a little bit. And so one of the interesting aspects of this population was that they're about over half of them, 55% of them, actually had severe pain. And typically we think of the severity of pain being associated with less efficacy if it's treating early in mild pain is more effective. But we didn't treat anybody with mild pain. We treated 45% with moderate, 55% with severe. So even in that population, and a population that were having more frequent migraine than would typically be allowed in most studies, these results really stand out even one step better because of the population being treated.